Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, it's wonderful to have you along. And do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. And apparently comment. It's supposed to be a good thing, too, for the algorithm. Not that I know what any of that means, but I know that's what they always say on these things. And we have no sponsor this week. I want to thank all of the people who have responded in the past when we said that we need sponsorships in order to be able to keep the show going. And apparently they have dried up. So if there's anybody out there who would like to see the show continue, we're going to need your support. And so please go on to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com, and sponsor an episode in honor of somebody, in memory of somebody, or however you would like to do it, just that we can cover the production costs in order to be able to keep bringing you our different insights. I would like to wrap up the Yeshiva series that I've been doing. And I wanted to end with some advice of how to maximize the time. But first, I have gotten a number of letters from people on this subject, and I wanted to read them out to you. But first, I'm a longtime fan of yours, way before your podcast debuted. Well, we're in our 6th year. I have an account on X at significant, SIGNIFICANT, SECS, I guess like seconds, where I describe myself as a Talmud Muvag of yours and post clips from your podcasts and speeches I find particularly significant, meaningful, or humorous. So there must be almost the hours and hours. Also, one's connected to the time of year. I humbly ask for a shout out about this account on your podcast so people will check it out and hopefully enjoy them and maybe even spread your wonderful influence even further than it reaches now. Regardless, I thank you for brightening days when I felt down, enhanced days when I felt up, for making me laugh, and thank yours truly, Shmuel Rosenberg. Okay, so those of you who have X, which I think used to be called Twitter, and you want to go check that out in any event, always nice to hear that people gain from anything that I have to say. So let's get back now to our concept where we're talking about yeshivas, and I've gotten a number of issues over here I'm going to try to respond to. The Rav mentioned that in many yeshivas, the boys learn a few dafim not very well. I would suggest that those yeshivas are not focusing on quantity of dafim, nor on remembering details, though, of course, it would be better with chazar. But the focus is on skills such as making a laning, understanding Gemara Rishonim Achronim and the skills, and thinking of lumdis. Perhaps the Hasidic Mahalach of Bekias is more palatable to the Rav, but there is also Amkus and lumdis. There are many Mahalachim of Limud Torah, and I know the Rav prefers one over the other. My preference is balance of lumdis and Bekias, but I can respect the Hasidic, Breslov, Sephardi, halacha-oriented Briska, Chavetz Chaim, or any other Mahalach. I know the Rav did not intend to rip any Mahalach, but to some of your listeners it may sound disparaging. It is so interesting that you take the Breslov approach, which is just to learn, even if you don't understand it, because whatever you learn, you'll be able to access when you're up in Olam Haba, and therefore it's stressing Bekias on Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim goes very, very slowly. And I don't know how you take the Chasidisha and the Breslova and put that together with Chavetz Chaim. I don't understand what you're talking about. Yeah, they're completely different. When you say there's a balance of Lamdis and Bekias, so when I was in Chavetz Chaim, the morning went very slowly with a tremendous amount of in-depth Ian. And in the afternoon, we did Bekias, where we would do 2 blot a week in the afternoon to be able to cover Bekias. So I don't know why you think that anything I said is contrary to that. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that if you spent an entire Zman and you did 4 dapim and you don't know what you learned, then I don't know what you gained. So you say, well, maybe it's just they're trying to teach you skills how to make a laning. No, if you want to teach someone to make a laning, you don't do 4 dapim a Zman. That's ridiculous. And if you want to say that it's there to give you the skills in Rishonim and Achronim and you don't remember any of it, so that when I sit down with somebody afterwards and we go through the Gemara and they can't say over what pshat was in the Tosfos that they learned, then if the goal of it was to teach you skills, it was not successful. So if it sounds like I'm ripping on yeshivas that spend an entire zman on a few dapim and the people do not know what they learned afterwards, I am. And so even though it may sound like I'm attacking them, the answer is because I am. So therefore, if a person, Taka, spent his time working on understanding a sugya and understanding the Rishonim, the Achronim, and at the end you could sit down with them at the end of the Zman and go over what they learned and they know it klar, then I understand that you were teaching them the skills and methodology to be able to learn. But if they spent an entire Zman on 4, 5, 6 dapim and they don't know it, then I'm sorry, that's not called a derech halimud. I disagree. Here's another one. I wanted to share a couple of thoughts. I thought you might agree that while a person should find a place that matches where they're holding, they should reach for one ladder rung higher. Whether it will be in the learning depth or seriousness or total time, we always put ourselves on a box. I guess he means in a box. And have a hard time imagining ourselves doing more than we presently do. When I was going from 12th grade to first year, I couldn't imagine learning 3 starim a day. If not for the fact that my friends were doing it, I would have had a hard time imagining that it would have been a path of success for me to go to such a place. I wonder if there's a reason you did not mention this idea, to realize it is at all possible we don't know ourselves until we open the door to the next level. Okay. The answer is I'm a big believer in being realistic. So therefore, there is a basic structure to Yeshiva Gedolah. There's no question. I came out of the Hebrew Academy of Nassau County where we were doing an hour and a half of Gemara a day. And I went into a yeshiva where we were doing 10 hours of Gemara a day. And there's no question that the first thing you have to learn when you make transition to that kind of yeshiva is Sitzfleisch. And that is a tremendous skill if you want to be successful in learning. You have to learn how to sit. It's interesting, in the Memches Dvarim, which we spoke about, the 48 things that will help you acquire Torah, one of them is called yeshiva. And some of them Farshim mean literally, you have to learn how to sit. And a person who obviously has ADHD is going to have a very difficult time sitting there for a very long period of time. But there's just discipline. By the time Night Seder came around, I was shot. And I just sat in my seat staring at the clock, watching the second hand move very slowly. Yeah, until the Seder was over. But okay, that's a skill. Sometimes you need to learn just how to sit. And there's no question about that. But if you're talking about going to a place that is above what you can handle, again, you have to be realistic. Because if you're going to go to a shir where you don't understand what's going on, and you say, yeah, it's above me, but if I just keep going, eventually, I'll chop it. Or I could go to a shir that's on my level and thereby understand what I'm talking about. So I think you have to be realistic. I said this when I was talking about Shidduchim, and this girl had an opportunity to marry this guy who was like this super masmid. And she was like, I don't know if I can handle that, but shouldn't I want to handle that? And I said, marry the guy that you think you want to marry, not the guy that you think you should want to marry, because that's not a good recipe for success. Next point. Second, for a person might think about going to a place that's geared towards the guys their age. A place that focuses on getting the most out of the young guys, keeping them from burning out by giving them the proper attention, occasional outings, and onegs, as opposed to a place where the young guys have their Rebbe, but the yeshiva as a whole is focused on the older guys. So this is what we call in yeshivish terms a stira minei bay. On the one hand, you say, go and pick a place that's above where you are, and then you say, take a place that's catering to you. I agree with your second point better. Yes, a person has to be realistic. And if I go to a place that's going to give me the skills and attention and, support that I need at this point, I believe that's better than going to a place where you will not be getting that support and you're just going to be thrown into a giant place and see how you succeed. Yeah. There was a very well-known yeshiva, and I told him this bacher was being lost, and he says, listen, this is the sea. We throw you in. You're either gonna swim or you're going to drown. But we don't do any more than that. And I think that's a terrible approach. Lastly, I think it would be good to mention regarding the three starim of Gemara yeshivas, their thought process, although you might disagree. Chumash, Navi, etc., these things can be learned on your own with little to moderate difficulty. As we pick up skills that learning Gemara gives us, we can take those skills and apply them to learning most anything, again, with little to moderate difficulty. As you said, by learning the Babas and Noshim, which really exercise the mind, similar to how it's expected that one who learns Gemara well for a number of years will be able to, at some point, learn on their own other Gemaras not covered in Yeshiva, as well as Shulchan Aruch. So too, Chumash and Navi. Okay. Maybe yes, maybe no. And a lot of that really depends on how much time you're willing to dedicate to mastering those skills. I understand that's the svara. There's no question about it. They say just learn Gemara, and from that you'll have the skills to be able to learn everything else. Okay? However, most yeshivas have a Mishnah Berurah Seder in the morning, or a halacha Seder of some type. Most of them have a Musa Seder, and many of them have a Chumash Shir. I mean, Brisk has a Chumash Shir, you know? So to simply ignore that, I think is a mistake. I understand the logic. The logic is if once you pick up these skills, you can use them to everything else, but that's assuming you're willing to give it the time necessary. One final point, those that did not learn how to make a laning in 6th to 8th grade, hope is not lost. It's definitely possible if picking the right yeshiva and researching techniques that help with this, if the person realizes the importance of it and can be convinced that it is possible. Again, not putting themselves into a box, they can pick up the skills to make a laning even at an older age. 100%. I think I made that point. The point is that there are a lot of guys out there who never picked it up and therefore feel their only option is to bluff. Whereas I maintain that you need to make a Seder and how to make a laning even if you never picked it up. Okay. Hi, you were talking about the idea of ego-driven motives for choosing a yeshiva. I would like to add that the basic concept applies even once you're in yeshiva. Sometimes you feel social pressure to be in the choshev shir or learn with a choshev chavrusa. I regret certain choices I made in my yeshiva days. How I wish I could go back and tell myself, I know that right now these things, like being the smart shir, seem so important to you, but believe me, 10 years from now, no one will remember or care who was your chavrusa or which shir you were in. But the progress and growth you missed out on because you wanted to be in that shir that you didn't really belong in, that's what will remain with you. Use this precious time you have to the fullest by not caring what anyone thinks and just doing what's really best for you as you actually are. Don't fall into the pretending trap. It's so short-sighted. Okay, that more or less is the rejoinder to the person who wrote earlier and said, go above where you are. This person is saying, be realistic as to where you are and who you are, and make sure that you shoot to achieve that. Hi, Rabbi Orlofsky. I'm a bacha learning yeshiva and have been following the podcast since the time it started. I always enjoy the humor, insight, and your brutal honesty and quest for what is right and true. Firstly, regarding the new series, How to Choose a Yeshiva, I just want to mention that England, I guess that's why he's from England, he likes the brutal honesty, which is where I'm from, does not suffer from the same cultural pressures which you discussed in the first talk, namely that potential father-in-laws only think about taking a guy who learned in Brisk, that in England is close to non-existent. Okay, in fact, I don't know about today, but there was a time when the standard model in England, and like I say, I haven't been there in years, but back then was, you would go to a high-level yeshiva, you would learn shtark for X number of years, and then you get a job. And that was, people who sat and learned long-term, that was definitely the exception and not the rule. So I guess maybe that's still the case. My question is, if there are problems in society of which there will always be, how can this be resolved today in this age? I've heard you mention it in a talk on answering basic questions that people just don't care. If that's the case, what can we possibly do to affect change and resolve problems? I'm not asking this as an attack on any level. I'm hoping for an answer that I'll be able to affect a change and make the world the place it is meant to be. So, my son, who is just too smart for his own good, was seeing the various flaws in the system, and I took him to speak to Rav Moshe Shapiro. And Rav Moshe Shapiro echoed everything that he said, and he gave a scathing critique of the yeshiva world and the way the yeshivas are being run. So at the end, my son said, so what am I supposed to do? So Moshe said, what do you mean? Because you don't have a yeshiva system, you don't have a yeshiva, you don't have a mashgiach, you don't have a rebbe. He says, when there's nobody around, you have to rely on yourself. So the way that you change the world is one person at a time. When I was in Chavetz Chaim, Rav Henach would always say, Avram Avinu was one person and he changed the world. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was one person and he changed the world. One person can change the world. And so when you see all the problems in society, and as you probably have picked up very often when I speak about the various problems in society, and people say to me, why doesn't somebody do something? And I said, I am. If I have to save the world by myself, I will. If you want to help me, there'll be two of us. But I'm not going to give up, because one person can make a difference. And so therefore, when you say, look at all the problems that are in society, we can affect change in ourselves. And as Stephen Covey speaks about in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you then have a circle of influence, and it extends out into your circle of influence, and you can make more change in that way. Okay. I'm not sure what the Rav meant by saying that we must know how to make a laning by 7th grade. Maybe in Eretz it's different, but in the U.S., almost no yeshiva starts laning until the end of 9th grade, most during 10th and 11th. Perhaps the Rav meant being able to read and translate the Gemara that was taught in Shir that day. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about. Could be things have changed. You know, I did graduate high school in 1975, so a lot of water under the bridge. Maybe in the past 50 years, they changed the way it was done. But when I was there, when you started learning Gemara in 5th grade, so by 5th grade, by 6th grade, at the end of that, you were expected to sit down now and prepare a piece of Gemara, maybe into 7th grade. But after that, the assumption was that, you know, you give them a Gemara to learn and they'll be able to learn it. If that's not the case anymore, I just listened to your first episode of Choosing Yeshiva. In it, you seem to address the Bachrim as the ones that don't think they are up to learning and to give it a try for a few years, and then the ones that are aiming for brisk. I wonder if you could address the mainstream Haredi Litvish Hasidic boy who, unfortunately, I feel like the situation resembles the seminary experience that you spoke about. They're not fighting with their parents who want them to go to college, but they come to Eretz for the chavaya, independence, and maybe a little learning thrown in. Most of these boys are here 2 or 3 years until they get married or end up going to Lakewood. I would love you to discuss why should these boys, yes or no, be coming here? What are the dangers? What should parents know before allowing them to come? And what should be put into place to ensure they gain from the years? Talking mostly to the parents here. I am writing this from the perspective of a wife of an Avreich that works in a yeshiva. A very firm place. And yes, as someone who hosted these boys for Shabbos the past 10 years, I definitely see a huge decline. These boys think it's normal for an average bacher to put in 4 hours of learning, an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon, and 1 at night. And like seminary girls are busy buying food, sleeping in, raging Shabbosim in Maron and Tzfas. Are parents just naive as to what's going on here? Or do they realize and say, look, sending them to work will definitely hurt their shidduch, plus the outside world is even more scary than a yeshiva. Away from home, so this is our best option. Now, first of all, I think I did deal with this because I said there are those yeshivas that are designed for people who want to come and learn for a year or two. And there are those yeshivas for people who want to go like, Brisk and Mir. And then there are the prep schools, right? They're the ones that are not Mir. People will come and learn for a few years and then go back to school, get a job, whatever it is. And in between, they're doing their time. Now, that's mostly what I wanted to speak about today. So I'm going to finish up this letter, and then I want to get to the topic I wanted to deal with. Personally, whenever people ask my husband, his opinion is don't send them 6,000 miles away where you have no idea what they are doing. I've always had this question because when I was learning here, it was 7,000 miles away. Has it gotten shorter? I know today everyone says it's 6,000 miles away, but when I came here to learn, it was 7,000 miles away. I'm just saying that. Stick with yeshivas in America, or at least you get to see your son every few weeks and keep your finger on the pulse. It's true, 20 plus years ago, my husband, my brother, and all their friends gained tremendously from coming here. The independence, the learning, the derech halimud, my husband picked up from Rav Asher Arieli. Now, okay, if you're going to Rav Asher Arieli, you don't fall into the category of the boy that you're describing, so that's not fair. But today, he just doesn't think it's worth it. Again, we are not talking about the nutty stories of boys sitting in deer is glued to screens 24/7 or worse. The average boy is just not taking advantage, pretty much wasting his time. I wonder if you could address this. Thanks. Okay. So again, to review the categories, because we talked about this. There are people who are coming to Israel for 1 year with a 2-year option. There are certain yeshivas that are designed for that. Those are guys who come out of high school. They're doing their year in Israel. Maybe there's a Shana Bet option, and then they go back to college or to get a job or whatever it is, right? That's one category. And then there are the guys who are coming to Mir and Brisk. Usually those people have learned for a number of years in Yeshiva Gedola in America and are now coming to Eretz for further experience. And then there's all the middle schools of guys who are coming to do their time in Eretz 2 or 3 years. And the experience is not dissimilar to what you are describing. And as long as we have raised this issue, I would like to raise the issue of people, quote unquote, learning in Koilel. These are the people who come to Israel to learn for a year or two after they get married. And it is really just an extended honeymoon. Generalizing here, but there are 2 types of people, those who generalize and those who don't. There is a whole sug of people who come here and they get themselves an apartment through an agent in Ramat Eshkol, in Maladafna, in Isaiah Bira, in Machal, and they have somebody who I know because this person does it for a living. I met them. They outfit the apartment. They don't want to go in with old furniture and old things. And they sell whatever was in the apartment and they buy new furniture, new dishes, new this, new linens, everything for the couple. And he's learning in yeshiva, and she's looking for a job, walking up and down Paran, drinking iced coffee. I'm generalizing. Yeah, waiting to find a job, right? And then they have to go out to eat, a couple times a week. Am I generalizing? Right. Berkowitz years ago said that he was working on getting a good hashkacha for restaurants because these American avreichim, if they don't go out for dinner, it'll mamish be a problem of shalom bayis. I had a friend of mine in yeshiva who was about tshuva. His wife was about tshuva. They both went to Ivy League universities, and they both became frum, and he was steiging away, and his wife complained that she never saw him. He went to his Rebbe and said, listen, my wife is complaining. I don't spend time with her. He says, she's right. You have to spend 2 nights a week with her. One night take her out to eat, and one night, take her for a walk or, some kind of activity. So he says, does the Rebbe take his wife out to eat? He says, my wife's Yerushalmi. She's never been in a restaurant in her life. She wouldn't know what to do if I took her there. I don't even understand what it is, But coming from where you're coming from. So it's mamish an issue of shalom bayis if you don't go out to eat. So people come here for what is, for all intents and purposes, a long honeymoon with no parents or in-laws, which I think is a very unhealthy way to start your marriage. Unless you have problematic parents and in-laws, in which case it's a very healthy way to start your marriage. But otherwise, you cut these young couples off from any support, and they end up making decisions and behaving in ways that they never would if they were still in America and had some type of supervision from their family ready to say pasnisht. But here there's nothing. And one of the local rabbanim in one of the communities I mentioned had somebody contact me if I would give shiurim to these young couples about how to behave like a mensch. Because 2 or 3 of these young couples would go away for a weekend together and hang out together, go on tiyulim together, and there was nobody to say this is not appropriate. There's no adults around. And that's a problem. So a lot of these people are not even under any illusion that they're actually coming here to learn, that it's basically a long honeymoon. I question whether or not that entire model is a successful model, and for Klal Yisrael, if we should be keeping that going or not. That's my opinion. But in any event, boys who are coming here for 2 or 3 years, and they're just coming, like you mentioned, for the chavaya, and is that a phenomenon? Absolutely. So a lot of these yeshivas understand that is their mission, just to try to be mechazek the boys in their yahadus and yerushamayim, and do the best they can. Yeah, they're going to go out to eat. Yes, they're going to go and have, parties and kumsitzes. Okay. So in a normal world, should these people be here? No. They should be home and having their mommy and daddy watch over them. And is that an advantage? Sure there is. The question is, if there are yeshivas in America that are geared towards being able to help these people develop, or just a place for them to sit and keep busy until they, I don't know, like you say, get married or whatever else, get their shidduch. So that's the idea of these yeshivas, to be able to provide it. Having said that, right? And I think that's a legitimate social concern that is being raised. Having said that, I want to turn my attention to the guys who have decided to come for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years. I'm saying once you're in a position where you're considered an alter bocher and a responsible person, and your life is basically inside of the base medrash, so I'm not talking to you anymore, right? By then, you are what you are. But when you first come here, the Eretz experience, you need a idea of how to maximize my time. So let's start at the beginning. If you are learning in Eretz, and the odds are that means Yerushalayim. First of all, appreciate the fact that you're in Yerushalayim. We take it for granted. There are so many people who come to Eretz for vacation, maybe for the Chagim, and they don't appreciate the fact that they're in Ir HaKodesh. Eser Kedushas Hain, the Mishnah says. The first one is Eretz. Second one is cities with walls around them from the time of Yeshua. The third is Yerushalayim. It's a different level of Kedusha. And then comes the Har Bayis, and it keeps growing from there. But Yerushalayim itself is considered a holy city. You don't just come to Yerushalayim. You can't behave in Yerushalayim the same way you do anyplace else. I heard from somebody, and I didn't check it out. I'm not Pesach Kron. Yeah, that the Baba Sali, who was based in Beersheba, I don't know how often it was, so I don't want to mess up the story, but from time to time would have his driver drive him to Yerushalayim, and he would just sit in his car and learn, and then go back home. Just to be able to be in Yerushalayim. And there was a Kedusha that obviously someone like the Baba Sali was able to sense, but not everybody can. So when we come to Yerushalayim, we should understand that this is Ir HaKodesh that's been lost to a large extent by the fact that there are so many places of entertainment. So when I come to Eretz, I have to know my makom is my yeshiva. And it's not my married sister in Ramat Eshkol that I'm going to go and hang out at. That doesn't mean you can't go and visit her for a Shabbos, but that's not my makom. It's not going out to eat, because I'm not thrilled with the food in yeshiva. There's different levels of yeshiva. Right? There's some places where the food is mamash inedible. There are some places where people say the food is inedible because it's just acceptable. When I was in NCSY, I used to buy from a Poshet caterer. It wasn't an expensive caterer, but the food was fine. Real people go to this and as a takeout place to buy the food. That's where we were getting our food. And at the Shabbatanim, everybody would make fun of the food, and they would make fun. Oh, it's disgusting. It's terrible. Fine. So we had at a convention, we had a banquet, and I hired a caterer who does weddings, a choshva guy. We had stuffed capon and apricot sauce. We had this, we had that. And everybody made the same comments about the food. Oh, disgusting and that. And I was like, okay, I don't have to spend money to have you complain. Then you realize that some people just like to complain about the yeshiva food. Is it as bad as people pretend it is? No, it's not. Again, if it is, then it should be brought to the attention of the Hanhala. Obviously an Israeli yeshiva has a different standard. I had a nephew who was learning in yeshiva. They were going through financial problems. And they started serving of zaken. I never even knew there was such a thing. And if you realize, I never realized it, but after I heard that, when you buy a chicken, it says of tzair. It's shechted when, I don't know, after 6 months or something. I don't know, that doesn't get very big. But the ones that lay eggs just keep growing and growing until they're too old to produce eggs, and then they shecht them. It's called an of zaken. You get a pulki like this big, and it tastes like rubber. All you can do is like make a soup out of it or something, And that's what they started serving because they didn't have any other money. But that was an Israeli yeshiva. American yeshivas, which charge tuition as a rule, that's not what they're serving you. Yeah. The Mir, which was often known to give very simple food choices, people there tell me today that they serve very nice food. Yeah, they understand times have changed. It's not even like when I came here. There are yeshivas that have real beds. When I came, everybody had the sachnut beds, the little metal frame with the sponge mattress, and the horse blanket. I mean, that's how everybody in yeshiva used to live. That's changed, So, so that being the case, does that mean that on occasion I shouldn't go out to eat? Yeah, occasionally you can go out to eat with some friends, but it can't become the regular part of your life. Regular part of your life is in yeshiva. That's where you belong. That's where you have to learn to adjust. Rav Gans tells the story that he took his son to the stipler to get a bracha on his bar mitzvah that he's going to become a Talmid Chacham. So the stipler said, I'll give you a bracha, but tell me, what's your plan to become a Talmid Chacham? How are you going to become a Talmid Chacham? This poor 13-year-old kid in front of the stipler, what's he supposed to say? He says, I'll tell you to become a Talmid Chacham. You're 13 years old. He says, you need, working with the Rambam, you need 2 hours a day to daven. You need 2 hours for eating and bathing and things like that. That's 4. You need 8 hours a day to sleep, either at night or 7 hours at night and an hour nap during the day. That leaves you with 12 hours. You learn 12 hours every day from now until you're 20, and I guarantee you'll be a Talmid Chacham. The point I want to pull out of that story is the fact that you have to sleep 8 hours a day. And this is what the stipler said. Yeah. And it's a big problem in yeshivas that they don't. Because people go back to their dorm rooms and they hang out and they have schmooze sessions and they end up going to sleep late. And they either then end up getting up late or they go through the day half awake. And they certainly are not maximizing their time. There's a time I was giving a shiur in yeshiva, and Seder was from 9 till 11:30, and shiur was from 11:30 to 1. And a lot of guys who were half asleep. Shavuos night, I gave shiur at 1 o'clock in the morning. Everybody was awake. It was perpetual jet lag, you understand? And that's a big problem. And so people who don't get enough sleep are not going to be maximizing their experience. Rav Pincus tells the story that he was in yeshiva and he was in charge of setting up the guys, setting up who they were going to eat the meals with. I guess there wasn't one dining room, who they were going to eat the meals with, and then where they were going to go to sleep, right? I guess there wasn't a dormitory, so people were going to go to one house to sleep, one place to have their meals. He says, well, you only have to set it up for the meals, because during the meals, people are going to talk and learning, etc. But who cares where you sleep? You go to your bed and you go to sleep. And I said, no, it's more important where they're going to be staying for the night, because people are going to schmooze when they get back to their rooms. And the meal is not such a problem. You just go in there and you eat and you leave. He says, and I looked at him like he was out of his mind, and he looked at me like I was out of my mind. But there was a time that you understood that, when you finished learning, you went to sleep. And you didn't have to chill. This word did not exist in my generation, even in my generation. Nobody had to chill. I'm reminded of what Rav Moshe Chait said that he heard from Dovid Leibowitz when he was in Chavetz Chaim. He says, he used to say to us, you guys don't even know how to bottle. Right? You guys don't even know how to waste time. When we wasted time, at least we did something. You just do nothing. Just chill, I remember, and again, I'm going back almost 30 years, there were guys who would just sit and read novels. They loved to read novels. And they couldn't wait till it was a break, and they would run up to their room and read another chapter. They just enjoyed reading whatever their choice of novels were that they were reading. Not something inappropriate. Vase, action novel, whatever it was. But they just loved losing themselves in that. So here, when you're supposed to go to sleep, you see these guys, sitting in the in the hallway with the light, just keep reading until 3:00 in the morning. Of course, you're not going to maximize your time. You have to use the time available to sleep. And if you're in a room where they tend to party, then move in with the nerds who go to sleep at night. You have to get your sleep. Very important. People won't tell you this. You have to exercise. I don't mean that you need a gym. I mean that you have to get outside and walk and get some fresh air. I don't care if it's a half an hour a day. I don't care if it's in the morning after breakfast before morning Seder. I don't care if it's at night after dinner before night Seder. You have to walk around and breathe. If you're such a super masmid, it's not a problem. Get yourself a walking chavrusa, and you can talk and learning while you go walking, but you got to exercise. There are more places today that recognize this. It's good for your health. It's good for your learning. It's good for you clear your head. It's good for your digestion. You just have to get up and get out and get moving. You can't just keep sitting. I forgot who it was, but there was one gadol whose doctor told him he had to exercise. And he says, I do. He says, what do you mean? He says, ask anybody. I'm standing the whole Seder, pacing up and down. I must walk miles during a Seder. Another helpful point. I don't know who said the phrase first. It's been quoted many times for many years. A masmid is not somebody who learns 20 hours a day. A masmid is someone who learns 60 minutes an hour. Make an effort not to battle. If you have a chavrusa who is too good a friend and you end up schmoozing, get a different chavrusa. Preferably a nerd, someone who's boring, someone who you're not interested in talking to. Yeah. Don't keep going out for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, unless you're the type of person, like I say, who doesn't have the attention span and you have to keep taking a break. But you'll find that even just standing up and stretching and then sitting back down can often be enough of a break. You don't have to mamish go to the coffee room and make yourself a coffee and sit and schmooze while you drink it. Yeah. Now, having said that, and I don't know the rules in every base medrash, but I always advise people, especially, they come for Elazman. It's still pretty hot here in Yerushalayim. And because it's not humid, people don't realize that they're becoming dehydrated. You find this very often when people first come to Eretz, they start getting these terrible headaches and this fatigue and sometimes nausea. They don't know what's wrong with them. And I said, they're dehydrated. You can die of thirst without realizing it. You can't die of hunger without realizing it, but you can die of thirst without realizing it. And therefore, you have to make sure and drink. Keep a nice bottle of water, and I don't think you should take a big bottle of water and drink straight from the bottle. I don't think that's bekovedik for Ben Torah, but have a little cup and pour yourself a cup of water. Or in my case, I keep a big cup because I don't want to keep filling up the little tiny dopey cup, and fill it up and drink from the cup like a mensch and keep drinking. And it's good to stay hydrated. And in general, it's good. It'll make your body function better. People do not drink enough water during the day. If the regular Israeli tap water is too rough on your system because it has a lot of extra stuff in there besides water, then you could buy bottled water. If buying bottled water is too prohibitive, buy yourself a Brita pitcher with a filter and just keep yourself enough filtered water so that you can keep drinking, but you have to drink. Drink, exercise. People don't tell you these things. They are important. Snacks, less important. Unless you are supplementing the yeshiva diet with fruits and vegetables, which might be a good thing to do. But the salty, sweet snacks that people tend towards is not going to increase your general health. The healthier you are, the more clear-headed you will be. The more clear-headed you will be, the more successful you will be at learning. Learn how to take notes if you never learned how to do it in high school. Yeah. Get yourself a notebook and do the best you can to write down what you're hearing in shiur. If you've got some extra time and extra motivation, write over your notes. Because most people will read their notes after the shiur and realize that whatever they wrote may not be comprehensible. So you might have to ask somebody, one second, what did he mean over here? What did he mean over here? And then write over the shiur clearly. You will see that it'll help you get a tfisa on your learning. People talk about a chavaya, coming to Israel for an experience. I think what they're describing as a chavaya is different than I would describe as a chavaya. Meaning, if you have a little time off, go to the old city. Yeah, obviously go dive into the Kaisel, but just go and look at some of the old shuls, look at some of the archaeological sites, see the fact that you're in Yerushalayim, where the Avos walked, where the first base of Mikdash was, where the Nevi'im walked, where the second base of Mikdash was. This is just to be able to have this experience. Again, I wouldn't miss out on learning time to do that. But if you got time that you're going to kill anyway, so you might as well use it by enjoying the fact that I'm in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. Get a kesher with a Rebbe. And he doesn't have to be your Rebbe. You might be in a shiur where you don't have a kesher with a Rebbe who doesn't speak to you. But you got to find somebody that you have a kesher with and that you can talk things over with. You may supplement the yeshiva schedule with, additional shmoozin. There are certain people who are known to be able to, I don't want to mention names because not everybody holds from everybody, but, you go and you hear a shmooze from this, a shmooze from that. This Adam Gadol, tremendous opportunity. There are a lot of people in Yerushalayim or in Eretz Yisrael that you're not going to get anyplace else. And take advantage of that, right? You're here anyway. The flip side is, as I mentioned a number of times, when I used to give my beginner's shiur in Or Sameach, I used to get guys from the Mir and the Brisk who would sit in on my shiurim because they wanted to supplement what they were getting in yeshiva with other classes in Hashkafa or classes in Chumash or other Yediyas that they weren't going to get anyplace else. So look into that experience. And you don't need friends. You just need a friend, right? Knelecha chove. Even if you have to pay money, right? Get yourself somebody who is going to help you through the experience. Do not be alone. And if you have a safe haven, like I told you, your sister in Ramat Eshkol might be a good option. But if you don't have that, so then there should be a family that you feel close enough to be able to call up and go for Shabbos, where it is a healthy atmosphere, and you feel like that you're gaining from the experience, and you get homesick. It's nice to have that. Here's what I would discourage. There's a minig that parents come from America to visit, and they take everybody out to dinner. There's a lot of bittul Torah involved. You should be spending that time in yeshiva and not running around to restaurants. Because then when the next parent comes, they also take you. When the next parent comes, they also take you. And then when your parents come, they have to take everybody too. So you don't need 15 dinners, there was a story of the Rosh Shlomo Zalman. The Rosh Shlomo Zalman would show up at a chasana, and he would, for 15 minutes, he would time it so he came during the dancing, and he would dance with the chassan, and he'd give a mazel to everybody, and he'd leave. And he would come to these chasanas, and he saw a bacher in the yeshiva who was at every chasana. So he finally says to him, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Misameach chos v'kala." He says, "That's not your avoda now. You're missing night seder, night after night. Your avoda is in the base medrash, sitting and learning." So he says, "Well, the Rosh Yeshiva goes to chasanas every night." He says, "I come in for 15 minutes and I leave." He says, "Okay, so I'll go to chasanas for 15 minutes, wish mazel tov, and leave." The Rosh Yeshiva said, "When I was your age, I sat in the base medrash learning. That's why I can be misameach chasam and kala in 15 minutes. You, Taka, you'd have to stay the whole night to do what I do in 15 minutes. But if you stay in night seder and you sit and you learn, then you'll be able to be misameach chasam and kala in 15 minutes also." So it's a good point. There's another phenomena. V'gam zeh hevel. Re'isi. What's the hevel? The hevel is that people come for sukkahs and they have fancy apartments and they stay in these fancy hotels and they invite the boys from the yeshiva, from the neighborhoods, and they go to these hotels and they have a lot of wine, a lot of alcohol, a lot of taruvas, a lot of leitzanis, a lot of kalas roish. That's not the way to be spending a yontif. Yeah. So either go to relatives or to a family at their home, or eat your sudas in yeshiva, but don't spend just bein hazmanim running around to the different hotels and the different things like this. You have no yontif. And that's why there are yeshivas that have been working on trying to solve this problem of what happens during Sukkot and these bein hazmanim when all the people coming from America and the hotels and the things. It's going to take away from the general thing. That's it. So come in, get some sleep, get some exercise, make sure you drink. Yeah. Try to apply yourself as much as you can during the times of learning. Don't worry about adding extra learning. That should be for fun, right? Go to a shmooze here, go to a class there. That's on the side. But if you're, make sure you're doing the ikr. Make sure that there's 60 minutes to the hour of the learning. Take advantage of that. Have a kesher with a rebbe. Have a chaver. Yeah. Get sleep. Keep the silly sessions in the middle of the night to a minimum, and enjoy the fact that you're learning in Eretz Yisrael, and that what a schus it is for you to be able to do this, and hopefully this will help you maximize your time. If your yeshiva is in America, like I said, this is how to choose a yeshiva. It could be that your best option is in America. Everything I said applies except for going around and enjoying Chveis, South Bend. You know what I mean? I've never been to South Bend, but in Baltimore, enjoying the sights of Baltimore, enjoying the sights of Lakewood. You don't need to do that. Yeah. Eretz Yerushalayim, that's a special idea of being able to get that. But if you're learning in America, everything that I said applies, and just make sure that you're going for a walk, you're going to exercise, but your spare time doesn't have to be spent touring. And that's it for this episode. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sign up for one of our online shiurim. You could sponsor an episode. And like I say, we need sponsors if we're going to keep going. So please consider sponsoring an episode. You can sponsor a question and answer session. You can, we don't have a sponsor, so we went a little long today. So you can sponsor Parsha 5. You can download Pesh Shiurim. You can submit a question. You can make a comment. And that's it. for this episode. Until next time, I am David Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.